Otherwise I'd have to bring you down to earth too. I know this verse hurts you. I tell you what, I give you advice. I'm feeling nice. Your vices could influence your writing if you weren't biting.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentary. We're going to talk about AEW Dynasty for 4/21, April 21st, 2024. We're going to talk about this show. It was absurdly long, like every AEW show. And it features the match of my lifetime. You know, the greatest wrestling match to ever occur in North America. Of course, we'll talk about it when we get there. Let's start out. First, Swerve Strickland wins the AEW World Championship, defeating Samoa Joe. The match was fine. I didn't have any problems with the match, really. But it was probably hurt quite a bit by the placement. It going on last, and everybody wanting to try to have a can you top this right before the main event. Because, you know, the energy wasn't even there for the main event, really. People had seen all kinds of car crash stuff, all kinds of crazy high spots coming into this match. And it felt like a regular... It was a fine match, but it wasn't like next level. There were definitely matches on this show that were better, more high energy, more hard hitting, more high flying, more violent. You know, this is what we mean by you're supposed to save some stuff for the main event. Samoa Joe and Swerve, they did fine, but it felt like this was for the international belt or something like that, and there was much more to come afterwards. Swerve came out dressed like Black Panther for some reason. I don't know what it is. Like, what's that about? Is that like his favorite comic book character, or is it that, you know, the irreparable damage the first Black Panther movie did to Black America, we're still going through that today? Because that's what it looks like. Anyway, a muscle buster was kicked out of, a house call was kicked out of. The big finish came with the Swerve stomp after a power bomb. I don't know what Samoa Joe was doing on the second rope. Like, what was he trying to do? It seemed unnatural for him to even be in that position. And that led to a power bomb. Then Swerve took literally forever to do the Swerve stomp. There was no sense of urgency in doing it. Which, of course, let you know that Samoa Joe was not going to kick out of it because it took forever. And there was a 3 count. And now Swerve Strickland is the first Black World Champion in AEW history. They're making sure to say that. It probably should have happened before. I definitely think that triple threat match took some of the steam out of Swerve Strickland, and he should have won the title if he was going to win it. He should have won it at Revolution. But it's fine. Samoa Joe did the best that he could. There really was no other worlds to conquer for him as the world champion. Got to go ahead and let Swerve have his time. Swerve deserves it. At one point in time, he was the most over guy on the roster. And it's not his fault. They decided to give him the belt too late. All right, match number 8. The Young Bucks defeat FTR to win the tag team championships. They were aided by the scapegoat Jack Perry, who actually got a surprisingly huge reaction when he came out, when he was unmasked. Pretty much everybody knew that Jack Perry was going to be involved with this. That was the purpose of them showing the footage from Wembley, is so that you could have some sympathy for Jack Perry. So now here he is. He's not even brought back as a babyface. He's brought back as a heel, siding with the Young Bucks. And that bald idiot, Dax Harwood, got pushed off the ladder by Jack Perry, and that allowed the Young Bucks to win. All right, the Motor City Machine Guns were teased, and just like I said before, you know, the Motor City Machine Guns are coming in. They're probably going to put the belts on the Young Bucks. So there it is. The match had a lot of spots in it. There was guys going through tables. There was guys getting power drive through ladders. I mean, the modern ladder match is all about just spots, just smashing through things, you know. I think we've long forgotten what a ladder match was supposed to be, you know. So now every ladder match is a tables, ladders, and chairs match. Literally. You could just call it a ladder match, but it's going to involve tables. It's going to involve chairs. It's going to involve a bunch of other stuff. So it is what it is. But They tried very hard. They tried very hard here, but shrug. It was a ladder match. And all these ladder matches are the same. I can't wait for somebody to decide to have a different kind of ladder match. So we won't have to see the same kind of shit in every one of them. All right, here comes the match of a lifetime. Will Ospreay defeats Bryan Danielson in a match that was 38 minutes, maybe 35 minutes. This is a match where you see people like Brian Alvarez and you see people like Dave Meltzer, and they say things like this. Dave Meltzer says, Ospreay won with the hidden blade. If you see one match this good in your life as a wrestling fan, you should consider yourself blessed. Brian Alvarez says, Ospreay beat Danielson in probably the greatest match that has ever taken place in the United States. This hyperbole from these geeks about these matches is what's actually doing irreparable damage to AEW. There was an article on Voices of Wrestling. I was actually going to save it for NXT because it involves Dave Meltzer criticizing Trick Williams. And we probably will save it for the NXT review. When the people who are doing the criticism, and they're talking about, there needs to be open and honest criticism, that's the main point of the article, is there needs to be open and honest criticism, good faith criticism, etc. And Meltzer's criticism of Trick Williams supposedly was good faith. But there's almost no criticism of matches like this. It's almost universal praise. It's the match of the decade, the greatest match to ever happen in the United States. That's hyperbole. There's just no way to judge that, for starters. And secondly, most of the people who are saying that crap would have said that 2 weeks ago, because nothing that was going to happen in this match would have changed their minds. This match in a vacuum was perfectly fine athletics, because that's really all it was ever going to be. From psychology perspective, it was decent. When they were doing Danielson stuff, which is the ground, the hard hitting strikes, that stuff was fine. That stuff was good, actually. When they started doing the Osprey stuff, him doing the Power Rangers fight scenes where he tried to kick Danielson, but Danielson ducked it, and then all this stuff that he did early, when he got to do the counter to the Hurricanrana, where he ended up doing a flip and landed on his feet, powering up after getting dropped on his head. We talk about that quite a bit. I was less interested, All of these matches, they seem to feature the same format, which is we're going to use all of our big moves. So like the Busaiku knee was used like 3 or 4 times. The hidden blade was used 2 or 3 times. And the moves stop being special at that point. And then there's not even something that's breaking it up. Like when the first hidden blade was done, I believe it was the referee, they were outside the ring. Okay, that was fine. But I think the second one, Danielson just kicked out of it. And it was the same thing with the Busaiku knee. When Danielson hit the first one, Ospreay just kicked out of it. It was just kind of like, oh, okay. Well, you could have replaced that with literally anything else. Why bury your finish like that? But it was all about popping the crowd. And the crowd had a lot of fun, But the part of the problem is when the crowd is amped for both guys like this, there's no heat, which means there's no intensity, which tells me that your story is lacking something. So this match goes into the same category as Danielson's match with Kenny Omega. Perfectly fine match. I can't say anything terrible about it. It would be bad faith for me to say this match sucked. It would be good faith for me to say it's a great match that you really only need to see once. You don't ever need to see it again. Just like all the Kenny Omega, Kazuchika Okada matches, in a vacuum, they're perfectly fine. If you found this match on YouTube and you're about to sit down and eat a bowl of cereal, go for it. But if you're expecting this to draw you some money in 2 weeks, no. It doesn't matter. Now, from a psychology perspective, again, the Danielson stuff was good. The ground wrestling, focusing on a body part, twisting him up, putting him in different submission holds. because he had promised that he was going to ground Will Ospreay. That was a good thing. They were following that story. He said something, that was what they were doing in the ring. Now, my problem is when I get taken out of the match when silly stuff happens. And silly stuff that cannot be explained. So Danielson does a tiger suplex from the top rope. So a tiger suplex, for those of you who are uninitiated, both arms hooked behind your back, you're flipped backwards off the top rope. So Will Ospreay takes this thing off the top rope 25 minutes into the match thereabouts. All right, maybe 20 minutes into the match. He holds the back of his head, he's kicking, blah, 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 blah. Danielson takes a couple of seconds, goes for the pin, Ospreay puts his foot on the ropes. Okay, fine. Sensible. Now, maybe a minute or two later, Danielson is kicking Ospreay in the chest. Ospreay actually starts to fire up. And I'm sitting here like, is he the Ultimate Warrior? Is he one of the Road Warriors? Why is this guy firing up after he just got dropped from the top rope onto his head? And he's firing up? I'm taken out of it. All right, you're bullshit, okay? You're doing what you do. All right, so about 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, thereabouts, Danielson gets nailed with the Tiger Driver 97. Same move Will Ospreay did to Kenny Omega, except it was a lot safer this time. There was no way you could truly believe that Danielson was really hurt. So Danielson is hooked like a Pearl River plunge, except for his piece picked up about halfway and dropped down. Danielson immediately grabs his shoulder and starts to seizure cell as if he's like choking on a chicken bone in the ring, okay? The referee is concerned about Danielson. He calls in the ref. I mean, not call in the ref. He calls in the doctors, but before that happens, Will Ospreay hits the hidden blade, 1, 2, 3, he wins. They then decide they were going to continue this story of Danielson being down and injured because it's typical of Bryan Danielson. He goes into these matches, he's the greatest wrestler of all time, and he's one of the best ever. Then he loses every single time now. That's been the gimmick. He lost to Hangman Page. He lost to Kenny Omega. He lost to Okada. He lost to this guy. It's like, how many of these huge matches is he going to be in, lose, and still get called the greatest of all time or some shit like that? I mean, it's just not realistic. At some point, you have to have some area of believability. In universe, right? We all know that he's a great performer, but in universe, he's basically like a high value jobber. You know, he doesn't win anything. He doesn't win any titles. He hasn't beaten anybody of note, really, in AEW since he's been there for 2 or 3 years. So Danielson is basically like a guy who, you know, he can get people interested because these are matches that they want him to have, and he doesn't get to wrestle these opponents. But for the most part, he's just there to put the guy over. So, I mean, in a WWE audience, that would take the energy out of it. Because they would look at it and say, oh, this is nice and everything, but he's just going to do the job. He's just going to go in there and help him. But for an AEW audience, they don't care. Because they don't care who wins or who loses. They're very interested in the athletics elements of it. Overall, though, it was a perfectly serviceable match. Really good. You should watch it if you're interested in these kinds of matches. For me, I don't really care. You know, take it or leave it. It's the kind of stuff I would stumble across on YouTube 15 years later. Like, oh, I remember this match. Like, you know, if you was to watch some indie show from 2004, you'd be like, oh, I forgot these two guys worked against each other. And you sit down and watch it because it's completely in a vacuum. It was mostly for the people in the building. The people at home, they could enjoy it, but it's not going to lead anywhere. Now, I will argue that Ospreay should have lost this match for the same reason that I was actually good with Hook losing later, and I'm going to talk about it, but I'm pretty much going to tell you, spoil it right now. The fact that Ospreay is just steamrolling everybody in AEW, it doesn't really do his character any favors. You know, sometimes characters need serious adversity and they need to fail. If you're not going to have Will Ospreay lose to somebody between now and whenever he becomes world champion, that's going to get to a point where people are going to lose interest. All right. It was the same thing they were thinking about when they beat Cody at WrestleMania 39, right? If you continue to just have Ospreay steamroll everybody, people are going to lose interest. They're going to look at his matches and say, oh, well, Ospreay is going to win. Don't need to watch this. All right. Again, people are far more interested in what could possibly happen, you know, more than who wins and who loses. That's why stakes matter. And this match didn't have any stakes. There was nothing on the line. But you could have created something if Danielson would have beat him. Now you could have changed Will Ospreay just a little bit to a guy who came in here, talked about how he was the best in the world, or came here to prove that he was the best in the world. He faced the best and he lost. So now he's got to find something else to prove. He's got to dig deep. He's got to try again. Maybe he challenges Danielson for the next show and says, I'm going to bust my ass. I'm going to earn his respect. I'm going to beat him in the next match. But instead, they had him beat Danielson. So now, why wouldn't Will Ospreay be the number one contender for the world title right now? I mean, what's your excuse for him not being the number one contender right now? Losses need to happen in order for characters to grow sometimes. Because if you steamroll everybody, then people very quickly lose interest. I think that the Ultimate Warrior kind of proved that. But they did use strategic losses with the Ultimate Warrior in order to keep his character interesting. To show you that he can be beat, he can be tricked, he can be outsmarted. The bad guys can cheat and he can't overcome it. Things happen. In a match like this, where there was no babyface and no heel, the best option would have been for Danielson to get him in a small package or some kind of roll-up, get a quick 3 count, and basically laugh at him. All right? Would have forced Will Ospreay to reevaluate his position. But now he's beating everybody. So there's no, reasonable belief that he's anything other than the number one contender for the world title. And he should probably win that match too. Because why wouldn't he? He got dropped on his head from the top rope. Canonically, there's nothing Swerve did to Samoa Joe that was as violent as what Will Ospreay went in with Danielson. That's why you shouldn't do stuff like that on the undercard. But it was a perfectly fine match. Good match. Match 6. Thunder Rosa is defeated by Timeless Toni Storm. And believe it or not, this was my favorite match on the show. Because the match wasn't too long. The story made sense. And I was interested in both talents. There was a clear babyface and a clear heel. And there were stakes in the match. But the real reason I was more interested in this match was the promo that Toni Storm cut on Collision. Now, Danielson cut a really great promo on Collision too. About, what heaven means to him. Even though it was real geek friendly. I would bleed right in the ring in front of all these people. You're like, what about your family? Don't you got kids? I know you got passion for the business, but by God. But Toni Storm is a character. And she cuts this promo about why Thunder Rosa wants this championship. And she says, you want it because of all the things that I made it. And it's a reflection. It shines in my reflection or something to that effect. It was really good, serious promo. Fantastic. Probably the best promo she has ever cut in her life. Very well done. This match epitomized that. Because it shows you that Toni Storm, as a talent, has the comedic element, but she also has that very serious side, that very dark side to her. And it was great. So you had this match was intense. The girls were laying their stuff in. It looked good. Toni Storm told a simple story. She was going after the lower back of Thunder Rosa because that's why Thunder Rosa was on the shelf all these months, was because of her bad back. Thunder Rosa was fighting from underneath. There's Mariah May out there. There's Luther out there. Toni Storm's, of course, in the ring cheating. She's just plain being unfair. They did the Deonna Purrazzo thing where Deonna Purrazzo came out there and took out Mariah May and Luther. But then the finish. The finish was what it was. A couple weeks ago on NXT, people were shocked that Ariana Grace and Gigi Dolan would finish the match by disqualification with a kick to the crotch. Or was it an uppercut to the crotch? It was one of the two. Two women, how could this possibly be? So they decided, we're going to swipe that just a couple of weeks later. Had Toni Storm kick Thunder Rosa between the legs and then hit Storm Zero, which Thunder Rosa had already kicked out of, by the way, because everybody's finishers are getting burnt on this show. But then that's how Toni Storm won the match. To me, I had more fun with this because it wasn't 30 minutes. It wasn't 45 minutes. It was a clear babyface and a clear heel. I was interested in both talents. The audience was interested in both talents, but they clearly wanted one person to win. I had more fun with this than I did with Danielson and Ospreay. Because for me, I was more interested in this. Good match. Great match. FTW Championship, Chris Jericho versus Hook. And a match that absolutely everybody seems to hate. The crowd is chanting, "Go home, Jericho. Go home. Clap, clap, clap. Go home, Jericho. Grow home." They're chanting, "Please retire." Oh, my Lord. It was a really generic no disqualification match that Chris Jericho won, but that was good. It was good that Jericho won. The issues that I had with this match is that it came to a point where Jericho hits the Judas effect, because nobody's finisher works on AEW pay-per-views. He hits the Judas effect, Hook kicks out of it. He hits another one, Hook is getting up. And of course, they do the stereotypical, he's a badass, bro, so he gives you the middle finger. And I was kind of like, I could have done without that. Just could have done without it. Not everybody needs to do that. Not every character needs to have that, "Fuck you, man. Go ahead, do your worst." I know that that's supposedly generic badass stuff, but it would have been better if he'd just been out of it. Especially if Taz is going to leave the announce desk. That was good. Taz was worried about his son. He leaves the announce desk. The fact that Hook was just standing up, flipping off Jericho and not trying to defend himself takes you out of the moment. Because you should be seeing how Hook is in trouble. Not that he's fired up and giving him the middle finger while he's got his guard down. Basically inviting Jericho to hit him with the bat. Which, of course, makes no sense, but whatever. So Jericho hits him with the bat and pins him. So after 3 Judas effects, or 2 Judas effects, however many it was, and a bat to the head, Chris Jericho wins the FTW Championship. Everybody is extremely upset that Jericho won. Everybody is extremely upset that Jericho is still wrestling. They're calling him one of the worst wrestlers in the world. People are saying they're ashamed that he was their favorite wrestler. It's brutal. Now, I'm not talking about this match being good. I'm not even saying like the match was good and people are, again, with the hyperbole. I'm not saying that. I am saying, geez Louise, man. I don't think it was that bad. I think it was unnecessary. You know, Jericho taking T-bone suplex through a table. He's taking a T-bone suplex while he's in a garbage can. He's trying to make the kid look good, but he's obviously going to cheat the kid in order to win. And they showed that Hook is an incredibly tough kid. He's taking all this to keep him down. Jericho had to dig into the bag of tricks and be super violent in order to beat him. But he needed to lose. Again, losses need to be strategic. And Hook losing this match was good for him. Him losing the FTW title was good for him. him, not being able to steamroll everybody that they put in front of him is good for him. I just wish they would have built more sympathy. That's the only thing I'm asking for. Hook is 180 pounds or something like that. He's literally like a middleweight. Why are you booking him like he's the size of Brian Cage? Like, please, the best story to tell is the most obvious one. Hook is young. He's kind of wiry. Yes, he's stronger than he looks. But be sensible. He's not some New York tough guy. His daddy has been on television for 20 years. He grew up in the suburbs. He had to have. He's not that fucking tough. Be sensible here. All right? You can have him be tough, but come on. Just be real. All right. Match 4. Kyle O'Reilly versus Roderick Strong. Roderick Strong wins the match. Physical match. Very athletic. It feels like there were 4 matches like this on the show. Because there were. This match should have been on Dynamite. This show ended up being so long that I say, why is this match even on this show? Kyle O'Reilly looks sick. He looks like he needs an IV. Or he looked like he'd been embalmed. My brother said he looked like Rick Grimes after 2 years out in, the world with all the zombies. I don't understand why you put this sickly looking man on television. Clearly he's got some real problems. He needs some sleep. He needs like a sleep aid or something. And we all need to just move on. All right. Roderick Strong wins. Adam Cole gets up and he's actually walking now. So I guess there's progress being made. But who really cares about that? But this match really didn't give you much of anything. They did some really good grappling. They did some really good striking. But ultimately, who cares? I mean, when you have 2 or 3 different workhorse titles, they seem to run together. All right, match 3. Willow Nightingale wins the TBS Championship over Julia Hart. There was some concern that Julia Hart wasn't going to be able to perform. There was some concern that Julia Hart was still injured. And they worked the match like she was, limited. She didn't do much. The match didn't go very long. And Willow wins with the Doctor Bomb. Afterwards, Mercedes confronted Willow. And they're teasing that big matchup for Double or Nothing. Oh, brother. The big match between Mercedes and Willow Nightingale. Yay. Don't you feel the heat? Who's the crowd going to choose in that situation where Willow is a babyface and Mercedes is a babyface? Now, interesting bit. I forgot that the House of Black had house rules. So, Julia Hart's, she's a member of the House of Black, and when they're the champions, they give themselves a handicap called house rules. So, Willow Nightingale basically banned all the seconds from ringside. Chris Statlander was banned. Sky Blue was banned. Chris Statlander finds out about this as she's on her way to the ring. So they're still telling the story that Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale, they're friends, but there's some issue there. There's some friction there. This Willow and Mercedes thing is not going to work out. Hopefully Chris Statlander can save it, or she could be, entered into this at some point, because she might actually be better in this role, but I'm not going to put my money on it. The House of Black defeat Eddie Kingston, Edge, and Mark Briscoe. I didn't care about this match at all. This is another match that didn't need to be on here. But Malachi Black did pin Edge, which is what I said was going to happen. And it's a sensible finish. And no doubt it leads to Malachi Black versus Edge at Double or Nothing. So that ought to be good. That ought to be good. They could have did this on TV, but that ought to be good. This show was so long that almost all of the first 4 matches could have been on TV. Match 1, the only match that I wanted to see coming into this show, Kazuchika Okada versus Pac for the Continental Championship. Very strong match. This match got a standing ovation, and I was like, that's interesting. I don't know why it was 30 minutes, for God's sake. Okada wins with the Rainmaker, but it was a very good match. I can't find anything wrong with it, but similar to Kyle O'Reilly and Roderick Strong and, the main event, it was a perfectly fine match that was on the same show, doing the exact same shit as Ospreay and Danielson. It was just on a lower scale on the roster. Tons of chops, tons of kicks, high flying flips. It's pretty much the same shit. So, Okada wins. Okay. On the pre-show, the Bang Bang Gang defeated the Acclaimed to win the Trios Championships, and now they're the winner-take-all Trios Champions. This, of course, got some attention because Max Caster mentioned basically another rape joke that he did on his rap to the ring, and a lot of people are very upset with him because how can he keep doing this? How can he keep getting away with this? The Acclaimed. Look, I think that once the AEW fan base turns on you as a person, they turn on your wrestling career too. And that's becoming more and more obvious as we go along. Whether it's Kane and Undertaker, whether it's Chris Jericho and now Max Caster or MJF or whatever, if they don't like you, then you can do nothing good ever. So Max Caster making basically the same joke he would have made 2 or 3 years ago. But because they don't like him today, because of whatever reasons, he needs to be reprimanded. The bloom is off the rose. The Acclaim sucks. It's like it's a generic battle rap thing. He sucks at rapping. I've been saying that the whole time. He's not good at rapping. But everybody was, he was dope. He was funny. Yada, yada, yada. He's doing the same crap. Same political stuff. Same homoerotic stuff. Same everything. The difference is people don't like him today. So it is what it is. Anyway, during the match, nothing of importance happened, except Billy Gunn continued to big league Jay White by no-selling his chops and everything, because Billy Gunn is so much bigger than Jay White. But Jay White did get the pin on Billy Gunn with the Blade Runner, so then there's that. Of course, a lot of people are upset that Jay White is in this position and working the pre-show, but there's a lot of other people who are like, oh, yeah, look at the kind of talent you got. You got Will Ospreay on this card, man. I mean, Jay White should certainly be on the pre-show. It's like, yeah, you guys talk a lot about Japan. How many of those shows did Jay White main event while Will Ospreay was in the middle of the show? Matter of fact, I don't remember Will Ospreay main eventing too many times when Jay White was in the country. But, hey, remember, Ospreay was their third choice. Omega was the first choice he left. They immediately went to Jay White. Then he left. And then they went to Will Ospreay. So, whatever. But that's the AEW fan base. They don't care. Overall, it was a very strong in-ring show, as we expected it would be. But is there anything that's coming out of this show that makes you more excited for Dynamite? No. No big surprises. No intrigue. No mysteries. Nothing really coming out of the show that makes you want to watch Dynamite. So, it is what it is. But let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.
Old non-aggression. Once that lesson sets in, you'll see a session. But you got an affection for no progression, regression.